Put a steak on a plate and nobody thinks twice. Now replace it with a piece of wolf meat and suddenly the whole meal feels wrong. Which is strange when you think about it. Both are mammals. Both contain meat. And technically both can be eaten. So why did humans spend thousands of years hunting animals like deer and cattle, while predators such as wolves and lions mostly stayed off the menu? The answer has less to do with taste than you might think. First, we should clear up the obvious misconception. Predator meat is not automatically poisonous. People have eaten bears, sharks, alligators, and other meat-eating animals in different parts of the world. In the right conditions, properly prepared meat from a predator can absolutely be eaten. So there was never some invisible biological rule saying humans cannot eat this. The real question is why we rarely bothered. Walk into almost any supermarket and you'll find beef, chicken, pork, lamb, and fish. You probably won't find wolf steaks next to them. And that tells us something important. For our ancestors, food wasn't just about whether something could be swallowed. They had to think about how hard it was to find, how dangerous it was to catch, how much energy it provided, and whether doing the same thing again tomorrow was actually possible. Once you look at predators that way, they start to look like a pretty terrible deal. Imagine nature as a giant food pyramid. Plants capture energy. Herbivores eat those plants. Predators eat the herbivores. But energy gets lost every step of the way. Only a fraction of the energy stored at one level of the food chain becomes available to the next. Most of it is spent keeping an animal alive, moving, breathing, staying warm, growing, and simply existing. That means it takes a huge amount of plant life to support a population of herbivores, and then a huge amount of herbivore biomass to support a much smaller population of predators. This does not mean lion meat has less energy per bite than deer meat. It means lions are much more expensive for an ecosystem to produce. For a hungry human, that matters. Why spend days searching for a rare predator when the landscape contains more animals lower down the food chain? Our ancestors didn't know ecology equations. They didn't need to. The landscape was already showing them the answer. There was another problem. The meal could kill you before you ever got to eat it. Hunting a deer is dangerous enough. A large animal can kick, charge, or injure someone badly. But a large predator is built for a different job. It has teeth designed to tear flesh, claws, fast reactions, and, unlike most prey animals, it may decide that you are worth attacking. Imagine two animals standing in front of a prehistoric hunter. One is dangerous because it wants to escape. The other is dangerous because it knows exactly how to kill another large animal. If both eventually give you meat, which one makes more sense to chase? Survival rarely rewards the most impressive option. It rewards the option you can repeat. A hunt that brings food back to camp is useful. A hunt that turns half your group into the food is not. Predators may have represented power, fear, and competition, but as a regular grocery source, they were usually a terrible investment. Now things get less obvious. Wild meat can contain passengers. Certain parasites can live inside the muscle tissue of animals without being visible from the outside. One well-known example is trichinella, which can infect several wild mammals, including some carnivorous and omnivorous species. If infected meat is eaten undercooked, those parasites can enter the human body. Today, we understand cooking temperatures, food safety, parasites, and disease. A prehistoric hunter had none of that. There was no thermometer, no laboratory, no way to cut open a piece of meat, and know with certainty what microscopic organisms were hiding inside it. And that doesn't mean every predator was full of parasites or that prey animals were perfectly safe. They weren't. But when one food source is already harder to find, more dangerous to kill, and potentially carries additional biological risks, there is very little reason to make it your first choice, especially when easier animals are standing nearby. There is another strange consequence of living near the top of a food chain. Some contaminants can build up as they move through it. Imagine a tiny organism containing a very small amount of a contaminant. A small fish eats hundreds of those organisms. Then a larger fish eats many of those smaller fish. Then an even larger predator eats them. Under the right conditions, certain substances can become increasingly concentrated as you move higher through the food chain. We still see the consequences today. That's one reason health advice often pays special attention to mercury levels in certain large predatory fish. Again, this does not mean every predator is secretly poisonous. Nature is more complicated than that. But it gives us another reason why living high on the food chain can make an animal a less attractive food source. The higher an animal sits, the more of the world below it has passed through its body, and humans usually had easier options. And this is where the story gets interesting, because humans never followed a perfect rule. We eat sharks, we eat alligators, some people eat bears. In different places and different periods of history, humans have eaten animals that hunt other animals. So the real rule was never, predators cannot be eaten. It was closer to, why bother unless there's a good reason? If an animal was available, culturally accepted, safe enough to prepare, and worth the effort, humans could add it to the menu. We are extremely flexible eaters. That flexibility is probably one of the reasons humans managed to spread across so many different environments in the first place. But flexibility doesn't mean every food is equally useful. Over time, certain animals simply made more sense. They were easier to manage, more abundant, less dangerous, and eventually some of them could even be domesticated. At that point, predators weren't just losing the competition, they were barely competing at all. Think about the animals humans eventually built entire societies around. Cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, chickens. These animals didn't just provide meat. Some provided milk, hides, wool, labor, fertilizer, reproduction under human control. You could keep them nearby, breed them, protect them, turn food from something you had to constantly search for into something you could actually manage. Now compare that with a wolf. A wolf needs meat. It is dangerous to handle. It competes with you for many of the same animals you want to eat. And raising a population of wolves just so you can eventually eat the wolves would be an absurdly inefficient system. That may be the simplest answer of all. Humans didn't avoid predators because predator meat was magically forbidden. We chose animals that made survival easier. And once those choices became traditions, farms, cuisines, and entire economies, the difference became so normal that most of us stopped noticing it. Until someone puts a wolf steak next to a beef steak and asks, why this one? So, now I'm curious. If you had to choose between the two, and both were completely safe to eat, would you actually try predator meat, a wolf, a lion, maybe a bear? Tell me which one you'd try in the comments because I genuinely want to know where people draw the line. And if you want me to keep making these strange little videos about humans, survival, and the choices that somehow shaped all of us, consider subscribing. This channel is still small, and every new subscriber gives me a pretty good reason to make the next one.